COVID-19, global pandemic. A message from the President. No gatherings over 100 people. Lockdown level 5. No gatherings at all. The church is closed. Or is it? 2020 will be a year like no other in history, as we were all forced to stay at home to minimize the effect of COVID-19. This meant we could not gather for worship, and special permits had to be obtained for pastors to counsel and see to emergency issues. It was a time of fear mixed with skepticism. For many, it was a shift to online for news, conspiracy theories, contact, and even for worship.
I'm Jackie Barker. I'm serving a small congregation in Strubens Valley, which is in sort of Roodepoort side of Johannesburg. We've only just moved here. This is a new territory for us. We've only started in the middle of lockdown, so it's been a challenge. So every week we produce a YouTube service and a voice note service, which has basically everything except the music, although we suggest for them to either sing at home or if they can get hold of them to listen to them. But otherwise you get a full service on voice note. And then we also produce a hard copy service. We have about 6 of our older members who can't access anything online. And so every Friday I drive around and drop off services for them in a little booklet. So that's been a nice way. I've gotten to know those 6 dear people very well because I see them every week as I drop off their service. What I also did is I did telephonic pastoral visiting. So I've literally phoned every member of the congregation and kind of, hi, I'm your new minister. Do you have time for a cup of tea?
I'm Brian Smith. I'm at Hillcrest Presbyterian Family Church in KwaZulu-Natal. So we quickly realized that church was going to be different and that we weren't like everybody else. We weren't sure of how long that would be. And so initially we started off by just the first couple of Sundays we were in lockdown. We tried to make do. And then we said, no, this could be for a very long time. Let's try and work out how we can connect with our community. So we really believe that even though we're not meeting, it's vital that we continue to draw community together in this place. So we've put together a Sunday service. We started live streaming from the very Sunday when we were in lockdown, but it's developed to the place where we have different families doing worship in their homes. They're a part of our worship team. We have different people doing parts of our kids' message, and then we've even got a family check-in time. So we ask 3 or 4 families every week to just tell us in 60 seconds what's happening in their lives. And I think we are more aware of our church family as a family and a community than we were before lockdown because of that. And one of the things that we said going into this, Winston Churchill said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And so we've seen this as a big challenge, but also said we don't want to come out of this and not have something sustainable that we've developed over this time when it comes to online. We know that there are people that even when we're allowed to go back to full meeting, we'll have connected with people that would still like what we're offering every Sunday. And so we are in it for the long haul. So when we can meet, we're going to continue to broadcast our service into the future. So we were able to invest in some equipment to upgrade our live stream and our church service on Sundays, and we're hoping to go live with that in the next couple of weeks. But we said this is not a stopgap. It's not something we're trying to do just to fill some time until we can meet. But we're saying let's use this time to develop something meaningful so that when we do meet again, that can continue.
I'm Reverend Richard Mkandawire, minister in the UPCSA-Synod of Zambia, particularly under the Copperbelt Presbytery. It's called Copperbelt Presbytery, all the way from Kabwe, Central Province, into Copperbelt. So I'm based in Kabwe myself, and I'm the current moderator of the Presbytery and convener for Mission and Discipleship Synod of Zambia. So, but with time, we began to do reach people using the internet, online media. WhatsApp became a major tool for us as St. Columbus. So we established a WhatsApp group where a few of them initially were on it, but it became a necessity with the advent of COVID. So I had to start doing services do an audio, record it, and then post it on that group. Do an audio, record it, and post it on the group. And many people are told, no, the pastor is actually preaching to us, for those that could have those gadgets. And so we would communicate through that and get to hear how they're doing. But of course, mostly the youthful part of the congregation are the ones who benefited, and those that are employment and they have money. But for my old gogos, the grandees, they were cut out. For those, I had to phone them now because I can't go to their places again. There's those restrictions. So how are you doing? Go, no, I'm doing like this and that. And then another time you're calling and then they don't know it's who's calling because, the eyes are going bad. That kind of a thing.
Well, good morning, Alan, and good morning to everybody who joins the workshop. My name is Theo Groeneveld. I serve at Emmanuel congregation, which has a daughter congregation called Grace, which meets in the same building, and we're growing that daughter congregation. We're busy looking at land and then starting to build a building, but we just felt that rather than meet in a school hall or something, we can use our church building as an incubator to plant a new congregation. We're situated in the east of Pretoria. Our congregation is about 400 families between Emmanuel and Grace, and we have an evening service as well. And we have a lovely spread. We have folk from lots of children, and then a number of retirees and everything in between as well. We in fact shut our church services down a week before the president asked that churches and mass gatherings be stopped, and we got onto putting out video services very quickly, and we record a YouTube service. I use cell phones to edit that service, and we've put that out. Our elders have stayed in touch with their districts. We've used WhatsApp, email, and then YouTube services to stay connected to our people.
All right, so I'm Chris Judelson, and the minister at Midrand Presbyterian Church, trading as Mid-Church. We go by that name at the moment, and have been here since 2004. And we called a special session meeting, and we said, guys, we've just got to very quickly change how we do things. And I think all businesses, not that we're a business, but all organizations had to do something similar. If they had staff, if they have ministry leaders or whatever, you have to get people online. You had to start to talk about how we could care for the congregation as best we could without meeting. So we had a COVID planning meeting that week before lockdown, and then started to talk about how we would try and keep the congregation connected to one another, and what role the elders would have, what we would do with worship, etc., etc. So, I think like everyone, we kind of hit crisis mode, which is not a bad thing, but it just was required out of the box thinking and quick decisions, so that when that lockdown hit, the hard lockdown hit, we had some things in place. Not everything, but certainly some things,
Thank you, Alan. My name is Madoda Mzwamadoda. I am a minister in the Theosoga Memorial Congregation in the Western Cape, in Langa Township. I think the lockdown affected us because it happened during the crucial time as we were planning the Easter service. So when the president announced this lockdown, remember, he just announced without regulations. But when regulations came into being, we realized that indeed we cannot, there was this abnormal situation, a situation that we have never been exposed at, where we had to think on how best we can serve our members. And at the same time, during that lockdown, things that made it difficult was members that were affected by the virus. Here you've got lockdowns, regulations. Here you've got members who are dying due to the virus. Here you've got people who are phoning you day and night with their loved one being in hospital. So it was very difficult. And I think we were caught, with not prepared for that.
Thank you. My name, I'm Royden Blackwell. I'm the minister at St. Andrew's Community Church in Benoni, South Africa. Lockdown came to us as a horrible surprise. We had a number of things planned for the year that would take us some steps further in being able to do what we were wanting to do. There were particular trips that were planned for us to be able to go up into Africa. They were going to be first time things that we were going to be doing, which was going to be exciting. There was going to be some good possible outcomes coming from there, and then the lockdown hits. That knocked us clean over, because now everything that we had planned was now possibly put on hold. Like everybody else, we assumed that lockdown was going to be for the 3 weeks, that we would be put on hold for a bit, and so we didn't take it extremely seriously, thinking that this was going to be something that was going to be lasting for several months. Our first approach was to be able to say, how do we get our services out to folks within the congregation, not taking it from the point of view that this is going to be a long-term thing. We looked at saying we'll do something that is audio, and we'll send that out. That seemed to be the quickest possible thing to do. So our first sermon that went out was an audio sermon. It was recorded probably in quite a lot of haste. The sermon was written quickly because we didn't know what was ahead of us. So a quick recording, looking at how would we now, with our children and our youth, what would we be doing? It was now putting together a quick program to be able to try to reach them. That was also done in a fair amount of haste, thinking that the following week we could at least get some things together, and we would be on this maybe for another 2 weeks, and then we would be out of lockdown. So not a lot of planning went in the first few weeks. What we did think that we needed to do was to try to, on a daily basis, encourage the congregation with daily devotions, a midweek podcast to be able to add to some of that encouragement, because people were away from work unless they were essential services. People didn't know what was happening. I think a lot of people were, in a sense, what you call shell-shocked, that suddenly everything had come to a grinding halt. When it was announced that the lockdown was now going to go further, we realized that we might be in this for the long run. And so planning for a longer time began, and we started to get quite serious about how do we put our services together.
One of the things we've obviously struggled with, which I think many congregations struggled with, was being an older congregation. A fairly large portion of our giving was plate giving, and so we lost a lot of income there. But we also then had members of our congregation who were struggling, who had lost income. So one particular member, who actually a very active member, is a single mom who's in the catering business, and so she had no income for lockdown, and that obviously was quite a dire situation for her. So we as a church began supporting her and trying to help her out, and came up with this idea of having a drive-through which would support her, but at the same time also start to build some community and connect people with the congregation and stuff like that. So I think we started about 3 months ago, where on the first Friday of every month, she comes up with a menu. So like I think our first one was curry and rice or feta cook and mince. I think that was all we had for the first one, just those two choices. And yeah, sort of, yeah, basic favorites. And then people kind of order with her via WhatsApp during the week, so she knows how many to produce, which mostly works. We've run up, in fact, our poor family has not actually had either of any of the months because our ones got sold, because people just kind of show up as well. But it's been huge fun, and people order, and then like the first month we were quite strict in the sense of people simply drove through. You have to pay cash, and then we'd meet through the window and we'd chat, and so they kind of would get to meet me from the inside of their car, and I'd get to chat with them or pray with them, or just get to know them a little bit, and it was just lovely. We just got to really create a bit of community. And what was so lovely as well is that they've started to invite members of the community and families and all that kind of stuff. As the months have progressed, it's still a drive-through, and the majority of people still drive kind of through. Although it's always a very, very slow drive-through, because the car stops and talks to people all the way along as it drives through. Yeah. But we've had a number of families who've kind of started, pulling over and now talking to each other. And so from this month, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be saying to people, it's a drive-through, but kind of if you want to bring picnic blankets, do so. And you can come and kind of fellowship in our gardens.
And including people, we've tried to include as many people as possible in a service. After 3 months, we'd had over 80 different people involved in our service in some way, either doing the Bible reading or doing the family check-in or doing the kids' message or the kids' Bible reading or whatever. We've tried to include as many people as possible. So when you connect with us, you might think, well, it's a hodgepodge of different people. But for us, people can go, oh, there's Wendy, oh, there's James, oh, and it creates community, which I think is vital at this time. People feel disconnected, and we want to try and keep those connections strong.
So then we started to encourage folk to get onto Zoom or Teams or Skype or something and have meetings, and not just business meetings, social meetings, and have a cup of coffee with your group once a week and just chat and catch up. So those were kind of the things I think the priority was connectedness. How do we move into a time where physical gathering isn't possible, but still remain in touch?
I called the leadership. We sat down and said, how do we still offer pastoral care to our people in this time? And so the leadership said, no, Reverend, we have to help you now, because you can't do this on your own. And so when we met, we had to reorganize the cell groups. They were larger, so we had to break them down and apportion smaller group families for them to have oversight, because without that, it wasn't possible to meet in a bigger group. So it entailed that I have to give them like a Bible passage, give them a scripture point of view, discuss it with them, and then equip them for possible questions which they may arise when they meet or on their own. And then from there, they go to those smaller groups. So instead of one big cell group, it became maybe 4 or 5. Okay. Yeah, yes. So that is how we said we need to maintain contact with the people. So I had to spread myself through my elders, for them to still have a resemblance of church in a smaller group, family of 4 or 5, then they are able to have the Bible study. You know, this is what the pastor is teaching us now. And this week we are looking at this, and that's what he taught us to bring to you. You know, so in a way it strengthened the cell group system, because it was generally some cell groups were bigger to a point that they were becoming more like a church. But now that began to break them down to smaller units, where my elders now, what I taught them, they in turn taught others, you know. So, and then the time the government said, now let's open, like churches now can begin to meet. I noticed, okay.
Sorry, carry on.
Yes, I noticed a stable membership of the adult members, of course, because the younger ones couldn't come because of the restrictions, are coming on a Sunday to Sunday basis. And this was something that I'd seen in a certain point in the recent past, when we had really, emphasized on the role of the elder in the church, so that they take up their role, their responsibility, and be able to do their portion. There was that noticeable growth in attendance. And it was the elders themselves who said it. Reverend, haven't you noticed that we're filling up the church nowadays? And I told them, it's because you are working.
Wow.
So,
and then there's been some opportunities to be able to do some discipleship training. That was quite a unusual process. And I'll put it as unusual because normally when you would run a course, people would come through to the church, and you would be able to run it in a church environment. Now it was going to be done over a social media platform, and the trying to understand, how does one actually run this? How does one get the information to people? How do you get people up and going onto a Zoom platform? That now became quite a challenge, because not everybody was operating on Zoom. With there being so many different types of social media platforms, any kind of new platform you operate on, you need to learn, you need to figure out how this works. So what we found is that we could send information out using a platform such as Google Docs. People could access that information. But what was good about that was, whereas if you were running something at the church, it was at a set time and may not necessarily have fitted with people's schedules. People were now starting to go back to work in some form of a capacity, or they were working from home, and their work day was much longer than normal as they were working from home. So they, at their own leisure, could now view material that was needed to be watched, and then a short discussion time that was put in was now a doable thing. And so we actually found that it was surprisingly more successful than what we would have anticipated.
And as a sheer experiment, I put everybody on a WhatsApp group, and I sent a message saying, listen, on Thursday morning, 9 o'clock, I'm going to send a hello everybody message to all of you, and let's chat on WhatsApp. And we did, and it was absolutely amazing. People just loved it, and very quickly we moved into having a Bible study on WhatsApp in a text format. And so what I do is I prepare some material which I send out to people ahead of time, and I'm just going to share that on screen for you. Let me just jump back to the right one. So this is the Bible study that I send out. It's this one in particular is one on Isaiah chapter 30. And I send that out to people 2 days ahead of time, and they just look through it in their own time. And I also prepare an answer sheet where I've typed all the questions and answers in WhatsApp format, where you can use a star on either side of a word to make it bold, on an underscore on either side of the word to make it italics. And I prepare that all in advance so that I can just cut and paste into the Bible study. And then on the Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, I send out the first message, hello everyone, and you can see how the different people then respond. And then I start off with a kind of a how are you question. And so last week I said, well, what are you grateful for today? And then various people in the group will say, you know, these are the things that we're grateful for. And then once that sort of chatting has gone on for 2 or 3 minutes, then I open in prayer, and that I record as a voice note. And so I always open with the voice note prayer and close with the voice note prayer. After the voice note prayer, I paste the text so that people can just read through that again. And then I ask the first question, and you can see the first question is at the top there in the green, and you can see the bold and the italic coming through. And then you see people responding to that question, and they just as we're sitting there, they're typing their answers, and the answers ping in, and it's quite fun to watch because these bubbles pop up and everybody's different comments come in. And what happens if you look at this next one is people will then even reply to something that somebody else has said, and they'll put some hearts on it or a thumbs up. And we do this for an hour, just working our way through the passage. And by the end of an hour, somebody once actually counted, some 350 messages were sent in the space of an hour. And people have had a sense of being connected. They've done some Bible study, they've had some insights, and they've thoroughly enjoyed the time that we've spent together.
For example, during this COVID period, we were able to deliver food parcels up to as far as Veldrift to plus minus 300 families.
Well, yeah, one of the things, interestingly enough, is just before lockdown, earlier this year, we started up a young adults group. We've done this in the years gone by with, it would go for a bit, then fall apart. And we realized that one of the reasons may have been that often these young adult groups were started by people who are not young adults. They are older members who say, no, we must have a young adults group, so let's start something. But this time it was them, the young adults themselves. So this is like 19 to 30-year-olds who said they want to do something. So we said, that's brilliant. It started okay with a couple of folk kind of coming to a gathering early in the year. But then lockdown happened and they decided they want to continue, but with Zoom meetings, weekly. They went to weekly straight away, weekly Zoom meetings, and those invitations started to get spread around, and the group grew during lockdown, which was lovely, and has continued to do that. So now, as the regulations have eased, they've decided the last 2 weeks to gather here at Ministry House, which is where we do some of these group things, but to Zoom at the same time. So they're doing both things. So some folk are Zooming in, others are physically present, but the momentum has remained, and that's been good.
So we have seen that the Holy Spirit moving creatively through his people has enabled worship to continue, people to be cared for, and even growth to happen. May the lessons we have learned be carried through to the future, so that once this lockdown time is over, we will be stronger for it.